But it was fascinating to see Donald Trump have nicer words for him than we've seen from some of the Democratic Party leaders in New York and beyond.
Let's head to Washington then, because earlier today we were putting the show together. We were sort of wondering if a meeting that was scheduled for 8 p.m. tonight would mean that we had to rip up our running order, that we'd have to start again. You remember, of course, that unexpectedly hostile meeting between Trump and Zelensky. I mean, we sort of expected it might be a little bit frosty, but the way in which it kicked off in the Oval Office that day meant that we had to change the whole show around. We were expecting similar fireworks, surely then, when the New York City mayor-elect, Zoran Mamdani, met with President Trump in the Oval Office this evening. They are the ultimate political foes. They have been at each other's throats for months. And then we got this.
But I just want to congratulate. I think you're going to have hopefully a really great mayor. The better he does, the happier I am, I will say. There's no difference in party. There's no difference in anything. And we're going to be helping him to make everybody's dream come true, having a strong and very safe New York. And congratulations, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Really funny, because that sounds just like Donald Trump, doesn't it? Whoever was doing that Donald Trump impression was incredibly good at it. Well, the meeting appeared to be, that was real, it was cordial, it was kind, it was respectful, it was diplomatic. It was not at all what we were expecting from these two fiery populists. Let's speak to Ben Max, who was watching along too. He's Programme Director at the New York Law School's Centre for New York City and State Law and the host of the Max Politics podcast. Ben, thank you for your company tonight. Explain that one then.
All right. Well, first of all, I think there's a unique situation here where Donald Trump is a creature of New York City and, of course, lived in New York City for many, many years. And that's where he made his name and his empire. So he has a unique relationship to New York City and does want to see the city do well. But I think the essence of a lot of what we saw today is that this was the first meeting of Zoran Mamdani, who is a very charming person and charmed his way through a mayoral race that we just saw, and someone who loves to be charmed. And Donald Trump took a shine to Mamdani because he got to actually meet the person who has been going around New York City charming people, whether they voted for him or not. And that's a lot of the essence of what happened here. I would not over-index this initial meeting in terms of what's to come, but certainly for what Zoran Mamdani as mayor-elect wanted to get out of it, he was very successful. And I think Donald Trump was sort of excited to meet someone who has Mamdani's energy. Donald Trump likes a winner, and Donald Trump loved the fact that Mamdani brought with him all of that worldwide attention, as we're talking here, that came with this meeting today, and even said so during the press conference.
And it's a good point. They've got a lot in common, these two, right? We set them up as these great foes, and they are clearly at different ends of the political spectrum, but potentially ends of a political spectrum that famously meet, Ben. And, you know, they are, flashy guys. They are attention grabbers. They understand the importance of the attention economy. They have that in common, and they are tapping into a similar sentiment. Maybe we shouldn't be surprised. Actually, they get along.
That's exactly right. And a key piece of it also goes into the focus and the policy. These are two populists. As you said, they are sort of different ends of the political spectrum, but in some ways they kind of come around and meet, right? So this is Zoran Mamdani, who ran as a populist from the left. Donald Trump has ran as a populist from the right. But as they discussed in this meeting, in this press conference, they both have had a significant focus on a cost of living or affordability, whatever you want to call it. And we're able to find some common ground there. Like I'm saying, though, this is the first meeting. I expect things to have a lot of tense moments in the future. We should not think that this is always how they'll get along. But I do think there's the opportunity here for more comedy between the two of them than some might expect, especially if Mamdani can convince Trump that help for New York City is in the best interest of the city overall, and that Trump will get some credit for that.
Okay, that's the sort of pragmatism that voters often reward. Actually, I do think that voters are generally sophisticated enough to recognise when their guy is being nice because they need to be. Until now, and I actually think that's starting to wane a little bit. We're becoming much less forgiving of people who take sides out of pragmatism that we disagree with. Do you think that there is a Mamdani base and a Trump base who are watching on thinking, hang on a minute, fella, I thought you were going to stick it to that guy?
Much more probably for some of the Republicans watching, especially Republicans who are looking ahead to the 2026 elections, and in New York and nationally, they were looking to turn Zoran Mamdani into this socialist boogeyman, and he undercut a lot of that very quickly. For Mamdani's base, I'm sure there were some people who were uncomfortable seeing him standing next to Trump smiling. But I will say, I think there are a lot of Mamdani voters in New York who understand the power dynamics at play. And the key goals for Mamdani and many in New York City are to not have Trump cut federal funding to the city and not have Trump send in a nationalized National Guard, a federalized National Guard, or do massive immigration raids through ICE and other federal entities. So there's a lot of recognition right now in New York City that Zohran Mamdani needs to play the long game with Trump and the federal government. And I think he's got a lot of leeway from the broader left in New York and beyond to try to do what he needs to do to make sure those things don't happen that I just outlined.
Okay, this takes a bit of forecasting, Ben. But did we see there the future of the dividing line in American politics? Is that what the Democrats versus the Republicans, whoever's in charge? I mean, maybe one of those men, actually, maybe even both of those men, who knows, will be on the ticket at the next election. Is that the way it looks?
Well, we can say for certain, unless there's a constitutional change,
that's what I was leaving the door open to, Ben. I was leaving the door open to that. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Well, both of them would need a constitutional change in a different direction to run for president or run for president again. So I don't know that we're going to see that. I think most people don't want to see any constitutional changes to allow Zohran Mamdani, who is not born in America, to run. And I don't think there's a big appetite for Donald Trump to be able to run for a third term. But right now, there's a degree to which obviously Trump is a standard bearer for Republicans, of course, nationally. And there's a degree of debate, of course, of whether Zohran Mamdani is a new Democratic standard bearer in New York and even beyond. He's clearly got a lot of momentum and a lot of excitement from a certain base of the party. But it was fascinating to see Donald Trump have nicer words for him than we've seen from some of the Democratic Party leaders in New York and beyond. And again, this is a recognition that this is someone who just excited a movement of voters across New York and has quite a bit of potential to try to address some of the issues that he ran on.
Okay, Ben, thank you for your time tonight. Nice to talk to you. Ben Max, he's a program director at New York Law School's Center for New York City and State Law, the host of the Max Politics podcast as well.
What I've shared with the president is our desire to not only follow the laws of our own city, laws that protect New Yorkers, but also a desire for consistency in our politics across the board. And that's something that we've talked about and something that I know many New Yorkers want. We discussed ICE and New York City, and I spoke about how the laws that we have in New York City allow for New York City government to speak to the federal administration for about 170 serious crimes. The concerns that many New Yorkers have are around the enforcement of immigration laws on New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs, and most recently we're talking about a mother and her 2 children, how this has very little to do with what that is.
What we did is we discussed crime. More than ICE per se, we discussed crime. And he doesn't want to see crime, and I don't want to see crime. And I have very little doubt that we're not going to get along on that issue. He wants to, and he said some things that were very interesting as to housing construction, and he wants to see houses go up. He wants to see a lot of houses created, a lot of apartments built, etc. And you know, we actually people would be shocked, but I want to see the same thing. Had anything like that? Not even close. If you go to 2 trillion or 1 trillion, it's a lot. We have a very productive meeting. We have one thing in common. We want this